Alrighty, hello, hello, hello. Are we live? Looks like we're live. Awesome. Cool. I'm gonna jump into our PKM and get started. I thought today we could cover a couple things on this agenda here, and if chat wants to do anything else, we can do that. Let me just pull up chat real quick so I can see it. Cool. Okay, yeah, today I just wanted to make a little note about making decisions and making mistakes. I wanted to kind of build up an index page and see what that looks like. I wanted to kind of iterate over some notes we made last time, and then possibly set up para. We'll see. So yeah, making decisions means making mistakes. What do I mean by that? And actually this is worthy of its own page, so we'll do that. And we'll open it. So making decisions means making mistakes. There's no such thing as a perfect decision. There's no such thing as a perfect decision. Why? We cannot have perfect information in the real world, right? We can't have perfect information, so there's no way we can make a perfect decision with an incomplete map. What is this related to? This idea that the map is not the territory. Okay. This might also be related to OODA loops, which we may come back to. But if there's no such thing as a perfect decision, and we cannot have perfect information, then choosing tools or frameworks or where to put a note in our PKM, it's not useful to spend too much time thinking about where things go, spend too much time thinking about the perfect organization system. And I know that's kind of ironic, given that I have a live stream of me talking about organizing a PKM. But again, PKMs are personal. Putting them together is something that is very unique to you, your own context, your own real world decision making. And if you sit here and fuss over where notes should go or how they should connect in the perfect way, you're not going to make progress. You're going to make a lot more progress by making notes and organizing them and going, wow, that sucked, I shouldn't have done that. Or wow, that was a good idea. You learn by looking at other people's PKMs, by watching streams like this, or taking classes from people who have their own ways to structure PKM. So there's no such thing as a perfect decision. We can't have perfect information. That means we need to be more okay with making mistakes. And from what I know, I'm not a neuroscientist or anything, but what I know about neuroscience is that when you're learning things, making a mistake is actually a huge benefit to learning. And if we're so afraid to make mistakes that we never do anything or never try anything, then we don't have the opportunity to make the mistake and correct it and learn. This is another possible note, right? Making mistakes helps us learn better. Okay, and these are all things we can develop and work on over time. So with that in mind, we should make sure that we're not afraid to make notes. We're not afraid to try out different folder structures, not afraid to try out different tag structures. The important part is that we're making decisions, we're making reasons why we're doing a thing, and deciding whether or not we want to continue using that, whether or not we don't want to fix it, this sort of thing. Cool. Okay, so that's this note on making decisions means making mistakes. Next, I wanted to kind of build an index page. in the Zettelkasten, there's this idea of like index notes, kind of help you, give you an entry point into your Zettelkasten, your Slipbox, your PKM, whatever. I believe Nick Milo is kind of popularized the term maps of content. So instead of a table of content, you have a map of content. So let's build one of these index pages for PKM. This is pretty meta. I don't want to spend so much time on PKM, but we kind of have to do that to bootstrap one of these things. So let's do that. So what is PKM? Excuse me. PKM is short for Personal Knowledge Management, right? And what are some existing, I think last time we chatted about why do a PKM. We want to organize interest and knowledge, produce some useful output, improve our thinking, right? So that's that. This is sort of a thing that we can include here. And this is where the Roam users are going crazy. Like, why didn't you use a block? We'll get to that at some point. We could use a block here, but I'm not going to introduce that at this point. Let's see. Yeah, so these are some possible goals for a PKM. Produce useful output. Also, learn more effectively is another one. If I can spell. Cool. What are some like previous implementations of PKM? Let's make these H3. Some previous implementations of PKM. Well, there's kind of the classic is the Zettelkasten, right? This is Nicholas Luhmann's famous Slipbox. He's got index cards, kind of like these guys. Fills out index cards, connects them with these kind of atomic units of ideas. I've also, probably the first time I ever saw a PKM was Ryan Holiday uses probably a system that's based on Nicholas Luhmann anyway. He uses note cards like these in a very similar way, and he called it a Commonplace Book. Was it a book? I'm not sure. Well, we can look that up in just a second. Another really popular implementation of PKM is building a second brain, and we already have a note on that, so we'll link to that. And there are, some more recent ones. Nick Milo's kind of linking your thinking. I'll do a full linking your thinking. What else? Matushak has his Evergreen Notes, right? And there's also this idea of digital gardens. Okay, we already have a note of that. Cool. So these are all like different implementations of personal knowledge management that people have sort of either popularized or published about or talked about. Yeah, let's just start building out some of these. I'm gonna actually turn this into a list. There's probably a faster way to do this. I don't know. Anyways, Zettelkasten. So yeah, Zettelkasten was popularized by Nicholas Luhmann, and I don't know how to spell it, so I'm going to look up Luhmann and make sure I spell that right. Yeah, so it's Niklas Luhmann. Okay. Don't need those. Right, and he used index cards to create a Slipbox, right? And, what are some of the terminologies he used in Zettelkasten? Well, he had fleeting notes. He had literature notes. and permanent notes. Right, so fleeting notes are kind of the thing that you got an idea in your head and you just want to take a quick note about it, and you write it down on a piece of paper or record some audio, whatever. Literature notes are notes that are taken from literature, so a book, an article, a course you're taking, whatever. Fleeting notes are, we talked about those, and permanent notes are this like fully structured notes that take ideas from fleeting notes and literature notes and your own personal context and connecting to other notes in your Slipbox to create these sort of permanent notes. Cool. That's good enough for now. Commonplace Book is very similar, but you know, I've seen Ryan Holiday use this, and I think earlier I said I wanted to put ads in front of people, so we're going to do that. Let's actually go back and do that for Mr. Lumen. Oops. Cool. So I've seen Ryan Holiday use that, and he got it, borrowed this from Robert Greene, the author of 48 Laws of Power, who probably got this from Nicholas Lumen. Okay. What we're doing here, like, this isn't like amazingly powerful information, so like, why am I writing it down? Well, the act of writing things down like this and taking notes kind of reinforces these structures in your brain. So, you know, it's sort of a way to attach more grab and go on points to your learning. So like this note is not super powerful, but if I ever am thinking like, oh, like where was the first time I ever encountered a Zettelkasten or this idea of a Slipbox, then this is a good way to kind of jog your brain a little bit. Yeah, building a second brain. Yeah, I took this class. You know, it's run by Tiago Forte, and we need to put an @ sign at him. Now, does that fix our other? No, it does not. So, okay, we need to fix this one. Cool. Okay, building a single brain. Major lessons are para, just-in-time management, and there's also progressive summarization. Okay, and we can fill these out later. It's related to PKM, which is this this thing we're building here. Yeah, I'm just gonna go through these real quickly and add like who kind of developed them or popularized them, and some basic notes on what they are. Hey Tom, how's it going? Let's see, Evergreen Notes and a Digital Garden. Yeah, so Digital Garden, this idea is popularized by Ness Labs. Her name is Ann Lar. Let's actually call her. That's Ann Lar. I can never spell her last name, so I'll add that later. Yeah, Digital Garden it's a similar idea with the Slipbox, but it's maybe more of a public thing. It's sort of a halfway point between, you know, rough drafts and polished blog, right? It's a space for thought. Hey Tom, glad to hear you're doing well. Let me know if there's any topics you want me to touch on, or if you see any like notes or something and want to hop in or add something to it. That'd be fun. I'm just right now I'm kind of putting together an index page, what I think Nick Milo calls these maps of content, and you know, I think in like the Zettelkasten lore, you might call this an index note or something like that. And after that, we're going to clean up some of our older notes that we took last time. So yeah, that's a Digital Garden. Let's look up the blog post for this. There we go, web. Ness Labs, Digital Gardens. yeah, so she's got this article that we can link to, and maybe we can make a page on that later. But she says a digital garden is an online space at the intersection of a notebook and a blog. Cool. Yeah, this is a great sort of definition, which we'll use. Space for thought. One thing I think is really important when you're building these kind of things is not to just copy and paste, but to kind of add your own thoughts about how this applies to you. Like, why, do I want a digital garden? I'm, in some ways, yes. I have a lot of ideas that are sort of festering. Is festering the right word? In my head, and it's cool to kind of share them in public and maybe have other people interact with them and improve on them or fight with them. And I kind of use Twitter as this very informal thing, but part of the concept behind this live stream was hey, let's build a digital garden from scratch. So I not only get to walk you through building a PKM, but also we can build a digital garden for myself. So yeah, I do. Yes, I'm building one right now. Cool. Any other thoughts on digital gardens? I think they're yeah, I like the idea. They're kind of hard to navigate, but that's almost by design, so I think that's okay. Yeah. I kind of think Obsidian is great for that just because Publish is so easy to use. Cool. Digital gardens. Evergreen Notes. This is kind of Andy Matuszak's. I cannot spell Andy Matuszak, so let's do that. Yeah. Andy Matuszak. Yeah, he's got this great digital garden here, and let's see, Evergreen Notes. This is kind of the classic. Evergreen Notes are written and organized to resolve. Yeah, most people transient notes. Yeah, so he's got these great ideas, and this is something that I might want to develop further. Is to dive into Andy's notes. Dive into these later. And so this is a point where it's how am I going to find this note? I know I want to do something with this at some point. So I think this is a good point to introduce a tag. Let's call this develop, right? And on our meta PKM page, we're how are we going to find in progress notes? And I guess our solution for this is, for now, we'll say, look for the tag. #develop. Okay, and in the future, as our PKM grows, we can refine this, because eventually develop is going to get overwhelmed. We might want to do some kind of more iterative type of thing where it's oh, there's seedlings and bushes and evergreen notes. We might want to do a more classical in progress, editing done type of thing. I don't know. For now, we'll start with develop, and we'll move on from there. Like I was saying at the beginning, make decisions. Don't let these kind of things hang you up. So we're gonna use this tag develop, and that'll work just fine. Let's see. We were at Evergreen Notes. Yeah, so we'll develop these ideas further. But he's got, kind of similar to the Zettelkasten. In the Zettelkasten, we had fleeting notes, literature notes, and permanent notes. And he's got some parallels there, which are, pretty similar. He's got evergreen notes, of course. That's kind of his big idea. And he's got, does he call them fleeting notes? This is something we can look at. Tom. So you're asking what's the point of a PKM? I never have a problem remembering what I need or linking things together. I suppose there's let's talk about why do we use a PKM? There's this sort of like idealized version of a PKM where you have all this knowledge written down, and when it's on a computer, you can kind of offload a lot of your working memory to the PKM itself, and you're not having to hold these things in your head. And I think there's some sort of like idealized version of a PKM where it's able to generate new insights, right? So you're able to take the things you learn and start to connect ideas that you already know together in unique insights. And I have seen this happen in my own PKM systems. It does require like a lot of work, and there's a very valid school of thought that's like why bother doing all this work, right? I would say that in my experience, having a PKM is worth it. There's a couple things. One, you say that you never have a problem remembering what you need, but how do you know that? You like, I mean, maybe your memory is really good. I don't know. But as I get older, I find that I'm having more trouble remembering stuff. I'll be like, oh, there was that one blog and that one guy said the thing, and I can't remember what it was. Having it in a PKM lets me search shit very easily. I don't know if you've noticed, but Google has gotten increasingly worse over the past few years. If you're trying to find like an obscure blog or something, even if you have exact phrasing, it's really hard to find the information you need. So I would challenge you to think about, do you really not have a problem remembering what you need? If you don't, that's great. Awesome. You don't need a PKM. As far as linking things together, like I said, it's worth... I think it's useful to be able to offload the thinking to a second brain or to a PKM. And that frees up working memory in your head to have these more unique, novel ideas and to put them together. Another reason I like having a PKM is that it makes putting together output easier. So for instance, I write blog posts, I make YouTube videos, and it's much easier for me to pull up my PKM and start to pull together an outline or a draft. That process is much quicker than if I was sitting down with a blank piece of paper and having to do all this research from scratch. Another really cool thing about PKMs is they can start to show you things that you're interested in. If you're not just throwing everything that you're looking at into a PKM, but you're picking things that resonate with you, that connect with the projects that you want to work on, that there's something really interesting about it. You start to build this collection of ideas and thoughts that are interesting to you and that you've wrestled with in your head. And that's something that's really powerful. I don't talk about this much, but I spent a good 3 or 4 years going down the minimalism rabbit hole where I wasn't taking notes. I wasn't even like taking photos of my life. I was very like, I wear white t-shirts and everything I own can fit in a bag. And I was looking for the ability to find out who I was. I thought that if I removed everything, I could figure out who I was. But I wasn't doing any of the like introspection needed to figure out what I liked, to figure out what things I'm interested in, to figure out what I'm good at. And without that introspective process, I was a good minimalist, but that was about it. Like that was my personality, and that's not a whole living human being. I think that you don't need a PKM to do that introspective process or to figure out what you like. But for me, having a PKM has helped that a lot. It's let me see, like, oh yeah, like I am interested in photography and in writing and in thinking about these things. So, yeah. The next point about having a PKM that I would challenge you on is it's very easy when everything is in your head to think that you understand an argument. We have ideas in our head, we have like, oh, this is clearly better than this, or this is the way health works, this is the way diet works. And in your head, they make sense because your brain wants to make sense of the world. And if it has an idea already, it wants to kind of justify that, like, oh yeah, that I know that, right? When you get these ideas onto paper, suddenly it becomes much clearer where the holes in your argument lie, right? Last time I made this note called, it was about tagging. Yeah, I wrote that tags are useful for marking status, not concepts. And in my head, this is very clear. It's very obvious to me that that using tags to mark concepts like PKM or concept or article, things like that, is not very useful. Whereas like tagging it for status or something is useful. But when I sat down to write down this argument last time, I couldn't really clarify why tagging was any worse than marking with a hard link. I still think this is true, but there's obviously like something in there where if I was going to try to convince someone of this, I would need to do some more digging, right? For me, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, so there's many reasons to use a PKM. It's one of those things that can be a trap, right? You might get sucked into building a PKM instead of just learning stuff, right? I know plenty of people who don't have a PKM and they write a lot. They have amazing ideas. They do great things. It's definitely not a requirement. But if the idea of a PKM kind of inspires you to take more notes, inspires you to interact more with the world, then that's a positive thing, I think. The guy who invented Zettelkastens, Nicholas Luhmann, he wrote like dozens of books and like hundreds of scientific articles. Like the guy was very, very well published, and he attributes that to his PKM. Writing a book is an extreme endeavor. To have dozens of them in your lifetime, and these are like serious academic books, right? They're not like fluff that he's kind of brain dumping, right? So there are examples of people using PKMs in a positive manner. I hope that makes some sense. I would recommend you give it a try. See if it helps you. If you feel like it's more busy work than not, then take fewer notes. If you feel like it's exciting to dive into your PKM and that makes you want to learn more, then that's awesome. Yeah, hope that answers your question. Let's see. Close this. Let's head back to our sort of agenda for the day. So yeah, we're working on expanding our PKM index page. So we talked about Zettelkasten, Commonplace Book, building us like a brain. Linking your thinking is one from Nick Milo. Right, and he's an Obsidian user, and he's got his own approach to the Zettelkasten that's a little interesting. These are all variations on the same thing. All right, glad that helped, Tom. Let me know if you have any other questions. I mean, honestly, like the thing with PKM is like you're just collecting thoughts that are useful to you, and they're useful to like projects you're working on, or you're collecting things that resonate with you in a very strong way. Like wow, I'm really interested in neuroscience, right? Like why? I don't know. Let's investigate that. And kind of that one of the mistakes that can happen with a PKM. I think I kind of talked about this last time. One of the mistakes is like collecting too much information. Just like, oh, like that's an article I read, so I'm going to save it. I definitely have done that in the past, and that's not a great use of a PKM. So let's list some common. What are some common PKM mistakes? Collecting too much information, too much summarizing, and not enough addition of your own personal thoughts. PKM is personal, and wrestling with ideas that are personal to you on paper in text is very powerful. It's a very powerful way to offload your thinking. Cool. I think that's enough time talking about PKM. Let's look over some of the notes we made last time. So if we open up our graph view, we can start to see some things taking shape. The Obsidian graph view is great. There's like ways you can filter things and color things. I'll actually set up some coloring later. I don't want to do that on stream. That's kind of boring. But as like, here's our meta PKM page, and we can say, let's set up some nice graph CSS. Yeah, back to this view. You can start to see like little nodes take shape. You know, like here's Tiago Forte. He's already connected to like 3 or 4 tags. You know, like here's Nicholas Zuman. He's connected to a few things. And you can see like things on the edge, you know, like here's Andy's kind of on the edge. Making mistakes helps us learn better. You can kind of play around it. Just dive in and pick out things that might be interesting to us. Sorry. I never switched back to the screen. Can you see that now? Sorry about that, Tom. Yeah, so we're looking at the graph view here, and what I wanted to do is like kind of go over some of the notes we made last time and improve them. PKMs are very iterative. I think that you should add to them over time, and not just add new notes, but also go back to your older notes and kind of revitalize them, right? So here's an idea from Viscount V. You know, he has a thing called like do 100 things, and it's, you know, I marked that it's related to maybe like the 10,000 hours rule and to skill development. Like, what are some of my thoughts on do 100 things? I like this framing, and why is that? So I like the framing of do 100 things better than you know, the 10,000 hours rule. For a few reasons. Why, right? You know, 10,000 hours is daunting. Is super daunting, right? If you work full time, you know, 10,000 hours is like what, 5 years, a decade, something like that. And not that 100 things will get you to mastery, but you know, 100 things is large but achievable, right? Sort of our first meta goal in this whole like PKM stream thing is making 100 notes, because once we get to the point of having 100 notes, we'll start to see some ideas take shape and start to see some gaps in our thinking, and start to see some of the things that we're building that you know, at least I'm interested in, or maybe as chat grows, maybe chat is interested in. Yeah, 100 things is large but achievable. 100 things doesn't tie you to a specific schedule, right? And you know, things is generic, but that means you can scale it, right? I have a goal to make 100 YouTube videos, and you know, a YouTube video is many hours of you know, writing and editing and filming and putting B-roll and, you know, making a thumbnail, all this stuff. So it's a big chunk, right? But if you're someone who's not very experimental, who doesn't try very many things, you can scale down, do 100 things. You can make it do 100 exercises. You can make it do 100 notes in a PKM, right? So like Tom, like if you've never seen the utility of a PKM, I could challenge you to do 100 notes and see if you find it useful. And at the end of 100 notes, maybe you'll love PKM, maybe you'll find it a complete waste of time, but you know, at least you tried it, right? You know, and 100 things is 100 reps is enough to get some, get enough experience, like really actually doing the thing. Right, so there's this like tension of like real world practice versus just like book learning, right? So like this is a concept I think about a lot because in high school and college, I was super, super, super into book learning, and I was very averse to real world practice. And while being good at book learning is an important skill, and book learning is a great way to learn things that are well established, you know, you have to expose it to the real world. We're coming back to that. Like, did I make a note on this? Reality. I haven't made one yet. So, exposure to reality is important. Is necessary. So this is one of those things where it's like, oh, like I don't really know what to title this note, but I'm just saying like exposure to reality is necessary, and that's kind of a crappy title, but it's a link, and eventually we can rename this, and the link will update itself. It'll be fine. Yeah, so that's sort of like an iteration on this do 100 things note. I might take a look at the web and pull up Visa's thread, do 100 things. I know he's got a few threads on this, right? Do 10,000 things, okay. Yeah, so like, here's a thread on doing 100 things, and we can just link to that here. Maybe we can investigate it later. I feel like I don't really need to investigate that right now, but Tom, you did 100+ essays on Twitter. Awesome. Were you in like Ship 30 for 30, or you just did that on your own? That's pretty cool. Okay, so like I feel like pretty happy about this note. Like obviously there can be more iterations on this, but like that's fine. Like let's just bounce back to our graph view and try to find something else that's interesting. Let's see. What's something cool? So yeah, we just made this note called exposure to reality is necessary. And, I think about that. What's that like kind of apocryphal quote where it's like exposure, the best laid plans don't survive contact with reality. I think I actually searched this earlier. Yeah, I was looking at quote investigator, and it's like, we don't really know who said this. Nice. Ship 30 for 30 is awesome. I mean, I kind of get annoyed by all the screenshots on Twitter, but like I love that it's getting people to ship stuff. It's cool that you went from 30 to 100. That's pretty sweet. Yeah. So this quote, anyways, it doesn't really matter who it came from, but no plan survives contact with the enemy, and this this is related to the map and the territory, right? The map is not the territory, and doing book learning is not. The book is the map. It's not the real world. It might help you get someplace, right? It's helpful to have a map, but it's not the same thing. Cool. Let's dive back into our graph view and start pulling out some other ideas. Yeah, so like I also made this other note earlier today about making mistakes helps us learn better. I've heard this idea in multiple places, but kind of the most recent place I heard it is from Andrew Huberman. He's a neuroscientist from Stanford, I think, and he's got a podcast where he talks about kind of introducing neuroscience and applying it to different areas. So like he has an episode on learning, and in that episode on learning, he talks about how making mistakes kind of primes your brain to learn. It says, hey, you just made a mistake, so let's do this again and try to get it right. And when you get it right, the amount of learning that you do when you made a mistake versus just doing it right the first time is much greater. Yeah, so this is one of these things that if I was going to write a paper on neuroscience, or if I was going to write an article on this, I would want to dive deeper and maybe find, kind of the meta-analyses that actually say this. This is like a very generalized, like making mistakes primes your brain to learn. Well, that's kind of It's vague and not really defensible. But if I were to say write an article on this, I could dive into that podcast and figure out what paper he was talking about in that podcast, and all sorts of things. But for now, just getting the idea here, and that helps me, get ideas kind of formalized and on paper. Like this sounds like it passes the sniff test. For now, we'll keep it here, and as we build more notes in the future, I'm like almost 100% sure, because this is what happens in my kind of real PKM. When we talk about developing skill development, we talk about mastery, talk about learning. This idea of like making mistakes primes your brain to learn, comes up again and again and again. And this is related to, that idea of like exposure to reality is necessary. And again, it's because we're, only when we expose ourselves to reality do we see that our map is not quite correct, and that's how we learn. Right? Maybe we can talk about that. No plan survives contact with the enemy. Well, the gap between the map and the territory allows us to learn. Cool. These aren't mind-blowing ideas, but it's a nice frame to look at the world and go like, hey, when I make a mistake, it's not something to get frustrated at. It's an opportunity to correct our map. Okay. I'm just going to clean up some stuff here. Don't need all that. Cool. Yeah, and now that I think about it, Tommy did shift 30 for 30. There's sort of, related practices, right? We've got a related section, so we could put shift 30 for 30 in here, right? It's called shift 30 for 30. Right, like why is shift 30 for 30 so powerful? Why is everyone on Twitter posting screenshots of their essays? Right. Yeah, because shift 30 for 30 is really powerful. It gets you, it gets people in the writing habit. It puts people in a sort of shared community, all working towards a similar goal. Right. And I haven't done shift 30 for 30, but I believe there's like kind of like resources on like how to write better, blah blah blah, stuff like that. It gets people excited to write and to think, right? Which makes me think of this idea I have that writing is thinking. Right? This isn't my idea, but this is something I believe, so it's worth making a note of it. Writing is thinking. Why is writing thinking? Well, I was talking about this earlier when I was talking about PKM. When we write our ideas down, we get we can expose our thinking, right? Because when everything is in our head, it's easy to overlook mistakes in our thinking, right? But when we write our ideas down, we can expose our thinking to, there's better ways to write this, but we can think about that again. Let's see. Yeah, when everything is in our head, it's easy to overlook mistakes in our thinking. And we might eventually link this to a page called writing, because I think writing is sort of one of those super skills. Cool. And who runs shift 30 for 30? I am blanking on his name. Dickie Bush, that's right. So yeah. So kind of what I do when I'm interacting with a PKM is I just like hop around and pick things that are interesting. But sometimes I can feel a little like it's bouncing around and not really focused. There's days where I love doing that, and that's cool. You're just kind of bouncing around different rabbit holes, like diving down, hopping out, jumping back in. But it can also be useful to frame your thinking in terms of projects. And this is worthy of a new note, right? Framing your work in projects is beneficial. Again, bad title, but we can fix it later. That's fine. So we could think about like, well, what is what is a project, right? A project is any set of tasks that results in a deliverable, often with some sort of deadline, right? So kind of our first meta project in this whole thing is to make 100 notes. But I think, in the real world, most people aren't interested enough in PKM to make notes on PKM. Like we're probably wanting to make notes on stuff that we're really interested in, right? I mean, there's nerds like me, and possibly you, the viewer who is watching, who love nerding out about PKM. But PKMs are useful not just for talking about PKMs, but also for real world projects, right? Projects help you keep contact with reality, right? And what I'm doing here is I'm just linking to this so that when I look in the graph view or I look at this page, I can come back to this, like framing your work in projects is beneficial. Yeah, so, what is a project? Projects help you keep contact with reality. What else is interesting about projects? I don't know, like there's something about projects that is very human. Like that's kind of vague, but it's a thought I had, right? And this is a personal knowledge management. So I'm gonna write it down. There's something about projects that is just very human. It's like, hey, I need to build shelter. Hey, I need to build fire. I need to go kill that deer. I need to go, farm something, right? There's something about projects that is a very human thing to do. And I found in my personal life that framing a lot of my work in terms of projects has helped a lot. It helps, it helps keep me focused to have projects and deadlines and like clear deliverables, as opposed to bouncing around. Bouncing around is fun, but sometimes you need projects, right? And there's an idea in there, right? It's like, how much of our life should be in projects, how much of our life should be bouncing around and playing, right? You can. This is like another entry point. Is like play versus, being serious, right? How much play is acceptable? How much play is ideal? Like, is it even like the right question to ask? Is there an ideal amount of play? I don't know. These are all like things that we can think about. And let's dive into this like kind of play versus serious thought. Why do we play? Why do we play? This is related to Ready to Go is sort of like the Twitter guru for play. He's always talking about playing. Why do we play? What are the benefits of play? What are the drawbacks of play? Why is it harder for adults to play? Right. These are all like questions that I might not answer them right now, but as we develop our PKM and keep coming back to things like play and seriousness and projects and all this stuff, we can kind of keep bouncing back to these ideas and developing them further, which is pretty cool. Yeah, let's see. So I was just kind of bouncing around here. We can close out some of this stuff. Do 100 things. We're doing 100 notes. Yeah, so we iterated on some notes we looked at last time. One thing I wanted to do before we ended the stream today was set up para. And this might be, I don't know, controversial to some people in the Obsidian world, but I still find folders to be kind of useful for personal knowledge management. I agree that folders can quickly silo ideas, but I think the power of having hard links and being careful about what you put into folders, you can still use folders in a powerful way. I think basically my thoughts on using folders. Well, here, let's make a page on this, right? Should we use folders in a PKM? Right, this can be its own page. I can't have questions in the thing. That's fine. What are the the benefits of folders is we can separate and organize information in silos. That's a benefit, but it's also a drawback of folders, right? Folders can silo information that wants to live together. Building a second brain has this idea of organize by actionability. I think that's the phrase he uses, right? And this is from, I might mark that this is from Building a Second Brain. But the idea of organized by actionability is that we should make our workspaces kind of reflect the amount of times we're interacting with different objects. Right, so what's an example of this? In a kitchen, we might have, you might have ingredients that are used daily. You might have commonly used tools like your knife, your cutting board, pots, and you might have like uncommon tools, right? Like some weird specialty device, right? Does it make sense to put your specialty device front and center on your counter? No, but it might make sense to put your cutting board front and center on your counter. So you want to organize, you would, in the kitchen, you would organize your kitchen by actionability, right? Don't put the specialty device front and center on your counter. The same applies to our PKM. So if you look here, we've already got a whole bunch of notes, and how the heck are we supposed to find the ones that are most actionable? If we're orienting our life in terms of projects, then it makes sense to have a projects folder that's kind of living at the top, right? So that's what I'm going to do right now. Is I'm going to make a folder and I'll call it 1 projects. And the reason I put a 1 there is so that the 1 comes to the top. This is where we're going to put sort of jumping off points for our projects. I'm not going to store every single note related to a project in here or try to organize or think about how all this stuff fits in there. But what I will do is put jumping off points for each of these projects, right? So our first meta project here is make 100 notes. So I'm going to put that in projects. Right, we're going to make 100 notes. We're going to see how they do, how they interact with each other, and learn how to build a PKM together. That's what we're doing right now. So that's projects. Projects are kind of like the most actionable thing you have. Maybe you might argue that like an inbox or some kind of fleeting note is more actionable, and we can develop that later. In Tiago Forte's Para system, do I have a page called Para? Let's see. We do have a page called Para, but we haven't opened it yet. So let's open that. So Para is a system for organizing folders, notes, using folders from building a second brain, right? And we would say that Para is an acronym that stands for projects, areas, resources, and archive, right? So projects are, we have I think we have a projects page, right? Project, right? We said that that's empty. Do we have one called projects? Where'd you go? Is it projects? Not sure where it went. I guess, okay, so I put the definition here, but really I should put it in this page called project. That's fine. Not a big deal. So now we can put this under project. Cool. An area where a project is finite. You can think of projects like finite games. They're and hey, here's a connection, right? Finite games. If you think about projects as finite games, where there's like a clear deliverable, like a deadline, that kind of thing, an area is, it's something. It's an area of your life. It's a domain of your life where you want to maintain some kind of standard, right? So you can think of it like an infinite game, in the sense that your health is probably the most common area, right? Example would be health, right? It's an infinite game in the sense of like you want to maintain a standard of health, but there's no end date. I mean, yeah, you're gonna die, but beyond that, there's no like specific point in time when like this is done, right? There's no deadline for it. You gotta maintain a standard of health for the rest of your life, right? You might have projects related to your areas, but they're not the same thing, right? So a project is a set of tasks with a deliverable. An area is like a part of your life that has some kind of maintenance level, right? Like if you own a house, like your house might be one, right? You want to maintain it so it's still livable, but it's never done being maintained, right? Like there's always going to be things changing. You might have projects related to areas, but they're different things. Resources are like collections of things that are useful but not necessarily actionable. So again, here we're organizing by actionability, right? Projects, areas, resources. So projects are super actionable. Areas are kind of less actionable. Resources are even less so, right? Like a collection of resources, like here's my like passport ID number. Like that's just a resource that is only actionable when it's needed, but typically it's just a thing that sits in your filing cabinet. And then archive is like stuff that you're done with. Typically, like if you finish a project and there's nothing you could foresee yourself using in the future, right? Maybe you did like a one-off project where it was just like, I applied for, a license at the DMV or something. Like you're not going to use that again. So you can stick that in archive, and yeah, you can find it, but it kind of is an easy way to filter out stuff that's old or not super helpful. Some people don't like Para. That's fine. I like using Para even in tools like Obsidian or Roam. I like using Para in obviously like folders. It's great. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it, right? This is a personal knowledge management system, and you're free to make mistakes too, right? I might walk back that statement that I like Para in the future if I find that it's hampering me in some way. But I think there's a nice balance where having some organization with folders is helpful, and being able to link ideas from different notes together is also helpful. So we're gonna go ahead and just make the rest of these folders. So we got areas, we got resources. And so like in the traditional, building a second brain thing, in the way my old PKM mostly works is it's in Evernote. And in Evernote, you can't do this like linking to other pages thing very easily. You can do it, but it's kind of clunky. So it's helpful to, in Evernote, you kind of have to silo everything into folders. And what happens is, what critics of Para would say is the problem with Para is that everything gets siloed into different projects, right? If I have a project to make 100 notes, and if I made this a folder and put stuff related to that in there, I wouldn't be able to connect those ideas to everything else or other projects or other areas. But the power of this like bidirectional linking that you can do in Obsidian and Rome and all these other apps now, is that we can have a little bit of structure, but not too much, right? I'm not going to make like subfolders and subfolders and subfolders here. I'm just going to have projects and this kind of main note, right? Here we've got a goal to make 100 notes. We'll do that as we progress on these live streams, and it'll be cool. I'm gonna add another project because I don't want this whole stream to only be about PKM. I don't want all my notes in here to be about PKM. So I'm gonna make another note that'll be a project, and what it'll be about evaluate air quality in my office, right? This is something I've been interested in recently. I've got a CO2 monitor over here that kind of reads like how much CO2 is in the office. And why is this interesting? It's interesting to me because I'm interested in different ways and different levers we can pull to have more energy in our life, right? All the organization in the world, all the best productivity hacks in the world don't help if you don't have the energy to get out of bed, or if your brain is foggy because you're sitting in a room with way too much CO2 in it, right? So this is another project I'm going to have. Evaluate the air quality in my office, right? And kind of the deliverable is a blog post and a YouTube video about air quality and its effect on thinking or working, something like that, right? And this, like, again, this is where, like, in my head this is like such a clear project, but now that I have to write it down, I have to like get more specific about what my deliverable is, and how long is this blog post, how long is this YouTube video, what kind of things am I going to cover? Like, these are all things that I can develop further on paper, and even though in my head it's like, oh, that's so obvious what I need to do, I can develop these ideas kind of better on paper than I would if I wasn't using a PKM. Yeah, so that's another project we'll dive into kind of next time. I think we've hit an hour, so I'm gonna start wrapping stuff up. Yeah, so what did we do today? Looking at our daily notes, we talked a little bit about making decisions faster, even if it means making mistakes, because you can't make perfect decisions, especially in a PKM. This is like a living document, right? Or a living database. People refer to it as like a digital garden, a place where ideas can grow and develop and be challenged and be discarded. And that's cool. I think it's really, really awesome to have a PKM. We made an index page called PKM. Index pages are great, like jumping off points. And what I'm going to do is going to put that PKM index page into not media. I'm going to put it into resources. Cool. So, this index page of PKM is sort of a resource. It's a jumping off point for me to explore my notes on personal knowledge management. We looked over some notes we made last time and iterated on them, improved them a little bit, made some more connections. And briefly, we set up Para and started a new project. So we got 2 projects. Make 100 notes, which are actually, I don't know how to count them, but I'll count them next time. We're making good progress on making 100 notes, and then we're going to start diving into this project of evaluating air quality in my office. So cool. Great to see you, Tom. Thanks, everyone who was watching or is watching the replay. Yeah, this whole PKM system that I'm building is available on Obsidian Publish, and there's a link in the description below where you can view the whole thing. So check it out, bounce around, explore, and see you next time. Cheers.